Today we're putting the Kia EV6 GT to one of the hardest tests we do here on the channel, the long trip test. In this video, we're going to find out how the GT performs on a longer trip, where we're going to have to stop and charge multiple times to complete today's challenge. How will preconditioning work? Will we get close to that peak charging speed of 240 kilowatts now that it is winter? And how many minutes will we have to charge to cover the 610 kilometer route? It being the middle of December and only about a week away from the winter solstice, we're gonna lose daylight in not very long. It's 2:45 and the sun is now setting slowly behind the horizon, and the rest of today is probably gonna be quite dark. So I'm enjoying the nice weather, the nice scenery, and just about the last 15 minutes of daylight for today. So I've been on the road for about an hour heading southward on the E18 motorway, and the car's indicating 219 kilometers of range, and we have about 201 kilometers to go to our turnaround point in Kristiansand. So that means we're probably going to be able to go there, turn around, and start heading back towards Oslo before stopping to charge. But all of this depends on the traffic, because I started this test late today. We're going to hit rush hour traffic when we get to Kristiansand, and also it being cold and winter. The chargers around everywhere, not only in Norway, but I was recently in Germany and Austria a week ago driving the new Skoda Enyaq, and down there also. The vacancy is not high at the moment at chargers. I mean, most chargers are occupied and a lot of charging stations are quite full. When I did the test today, all chargers were almost full in Sleppenden, which is very rare. So it's going to be interesting what we're going to do today, where we're going to stop and charge, because we're probably going to have to do 2 charging sessions, and it being cold also, we're going to be very reliant on the preconditioning of the battery, which is done by a navigation system. It has worked fine in this car for now for shorter trips, but this being a long trip where we're going, more than 600 kilometers, we're traveling for about 6 or 7 hours. That may put, strains on the battery. This drivetrain has been known to overheat when you push it too much. And when I'm talking about pushing, I'm talking about long drives at motorway speeds and stopping to charge multiple times. This battery, at least in warmer conditions, has had a tendency to overheat. So we're gonna see what happens today. Overheating means we're not gonna get that ultimate charging speed, but I think the cold maybe will make this car perform better than if it was like 20 degrees outside. So we're about 2 hours away from our destination. Hope you guys will enjoy the B-roll on our way down, and I'll talk to you guys in a few hours. Now a little past 4:30, and it is almost completely dark outside. But what's interesting is that about a month and a half ago we were actually in Stockholm, and it was even darker a little bit earlier, and that is because we're further west in the time zone and also south compared to Stockholm. But it's just interesting to compare. I was there not a long time ago. So we're gonna stop here at this Circle K charging station here, because I think they have the new HPC chargers here, which are like 225 kilowatts if I'm not mistaken. And one fatal flaw about this car, which really makes you, have to think when taking this on a long trip and require more planning and just thought and strategy behind, you know, charging and traveling, is that it does have preconditioning, yes, but the preconditioning does stop once you hit 19%. So we were preconditioning from about 25% state of charge down to 19, and that is because I was a little bit late in activating the preconditioning, which I did by, you know, putting a charging station into the navigation system, which I really wasn't planning on doing. I was actually planning on going to Kristiansand and start moving, you know, back towards Oslo again, but I, you know, remember that no, this car stops preconditioning and it's cold outside, so the battery is probably really cold. So that's why I want to stop and charge earlier, because I really think I'm gonna get, you know, higher charging speed with this. And this guy doesn't know how to use his blinkers. So if he uses blinkers, we would know where he was going. But let's go over to this charger here. I think this is 225 kilowatts, and pop out and see what charging speed we get. We're now connected at 19% state of charge, and we're getting 68 kilowatts, but I'm suspecting that give this a little bit more time and that speed is going to pick up. So as I said, you know, my strategy and my plan has completely shifted now, because my plan was to go to Kristiansand and then start moving back towards Oslo and then charging, you know, right outside of Kristiansand and doing 2 charging stops. I estimated I would go to about, you know, 55 or 60% before going to the next charging station around Rugtvedt. Not completely sure what I want to do now, because I probably want to do a deeper charge, because with this car, that, you know, fast charging speed, that peak of 240 kilowatts, we want to try to utilize as much as possible. And again, that's the fail of, you know, what I did now. Not a completely fail, but, you know, I forgot that you have to precondition this battery earlier, because it stops preconditioning once you go below 20%. I'm not sure yet if that, you know, will have an actual impact, but that does, you know, as I said, require more planning, more strategy, and that means my plan has changed now, where we're going to go into a deeper charge and not utilize below 20%. And that really is a penalty of this car, is the way it manages, you know, that preconditioning, because other cars do it better. Other cars, you know, will precondition all the way down to almost 0% state of charge. They probably have a cutoff, but no other car has a cutoff at 20%, as I've seen. I was just, you know, in Austria, as I said, testing the brand new Skoda Enyaq, which has a brand new infotainment system with preconditioning via navigation system and also manually. And the interface there is awesome. I'm going to overlay here and go check out that video, because you can press manually. It will tell you, you know, how long time it takes to reach that, you know, peak charging or battery temperature for peak charging speed, and also the speed you'll get at that percentage. You don't have to do any guessing. You don't have to have any, you know, external devices to manage battery or to measure battery temperature. So I think we're going to give this maybe to 31%, and then I'll update you guys to see if we're getting more charging speed. We're now getting 73 kilowatts, which really isn't a lot. These chargers here are actually 300 kilowatts, and we're now the only car charging here, because this Mustang Mach-E is leaving. So there's nothing in the way for us getting potentially peak charging speed from these chargers. So charging speed has picked up quite nicely. At around 50%, we were at around 155 kilowatts, and now at around 60%, we're down to 130. And I think we're gonna go to 80%, do a deep charge now, so we can precondition earlier and plan on charging at our next charging stop at around 20% state of charge. We're now here in Kristiansand, and luckily, because we stopped to charge and we, well, got on our way a little bit late, there's no rush hour. It's now 5:30 and rush hour is over, which is pretty decent. This car seems to have a problem with humidity. The windows just fogging up in tunnels, which is just super annoying. I had this issue the other day when I did my motorway range test, and I've had that issue today. Today I am running the car in eco mode and also without any regen on. So the regen level is set to 0, because I've had a few comments from people claiming that the car is more efficient even when you're driving in adaptive cruise control. People are saying that it's still more efficient because it completely decouples the front motor, because that is what is used for regen, even when you're using adaptive cruise control. I'm not sure if that is entirely true. But our consumption now is 23.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is okay. But we have had much milder temperatures here in the south of Norway than around Oslo, and what we did in my range test is around 4 degrees Celsius now. And we'll see once we get back to Oslo. If we have this consumption here when we get back to Oslo, I think it's pretty conclusive that this car is more efficient when we're running it in this configuration. Because what we can do is that even though we're not doing, an apples to apples comparison, I always do the motorway range test and this long trip test in the car. So that gap between those two consumptions, because this is a different route, the speed is different, speed is lower in this test, and also over a bigger geographic area, we usually have, more variance in temperatures. We can see what that delta is, and I can do an average, and then what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to do it in post and edit to put it on the screen for you guys, which is the most, oh, he's going to go in here? No. The guy blinking into this, why did he blink to the right and then he went to the left? That was really weird. Now, so we can see that if the consumption rises about a kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers, then this configuration really isn't any more efficient than running it, with the regen on and just using adaptive cruise control, because adaptive cruise control is what I use on all of these, trips where you're going on a motorway or just on a country road or a highway, because you're not driving the car manually, just setting adaptive cruise control, letting the car manage everything. And in my experience, that is the most efficient. Everything that is done manually usually doesn't apply with most of these cars. But with this car, I don't know. That's what we're going to find out at the end of the video in today's test. So we're at 71% state of charge. We're going to go to the chargers in Rugtvedt, some 400 kilowatt chargers, so we can get, that peak charging speed. So I'm going to put that into the navigation system, let the car do everything, the management of the preconditioning, and hopefully we'll see a peak charging speed close to that 240 kilowatts at our next charging stop. We're now here doing our second charging stop at the recharge chargers at the Esso station in Rugtvedt. We connected at 21% stated charge, and we're now up to 126 kilowatts. I put this charger into the navigation system, and the car started to precondition at around 40%, or about 40 minutes before we arrived here. I think the speed is going to pick up once we start climbing in the battery percentage, so I'm going to give you guys an update at around maybe 30-35%. But before we're there, I just want to give a huge thanks to today's video sponsor, Recharge, the largest charge point operator in the Nordics, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, with more than 4,000 charging points across all of these countries. They are insane. They've been building a lot of new charging stations lately, and also updating a lot of their old sites from 2 and 4, 50 and 150 kilowatt chargers to new locations with like 8 and 12 and 14 and 16 high power chargers. So that is pretty cool, and the future of charging. So if you want to find out where your closest recharge charger is, go to the link in the description box down below and find out where it is. Okay, great. This is more like it. 26%, 197 kilowatts. That is pretty decent. So let's check out how far it is to our destination. So we're going to put it in here, and that is the Esso station in Slependen. I talked about this before. I did, a top 6 electric family EVs. And this is on my list of the best and one of my most favorite. But one of the things I really don't like about this car is the infotainment system. So you choose it and then you have to select it again. There's a lot of things that here are just so cumbersome, not easy to use. It's not, the best laid out. It's not the quickest. It's not the easiest to navigate. It really is one of the weak points of a car that already is really good. So you have to press so many times to start navigation. 148 kilometers. So I think we're going to charge to around 60%. That will give us enough, juice to get to where we're going. So this is another thing I just want to show you guys why I don't like this. I've been, fiddling around a lot with this navigation system. It's not easy to do, especially on the move and trying to, you know, find these chargers along the way. So now we're navigated, right? This is in Norwegian, but I'm going to tell you guys what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to the menu here, and then I'm going to do or you don't have to go to the menu, you can go here, find a charging station. So it will do, you know, near your endpoint, or no, near where you are, or near your endpoint, or along the route, right? That seems to be pretty awesome and decent. And also you can sort by a name or distance. So the issue here is that you're gonna like, okay, this is 50 meters away, 250 meters, etc., etc., etc. But then it will get down here. So we can only do a maximum number of chargers on the way. And I think it's not you know, limited by distance. It's actually limited by the number in this list here. And other places, well, that may not be an issue where you don't have this many chargers along the route. But this is a problem, because if I wanted to charge, you know, somewhere along the route, about halfway in between here and where we're going, which is about 75 kilometers, I cannot find that charger. This is so super annoying. Don't know why they do this. So yeah, it's just a little bit cumbersome and not easy to use, along with, you know, how the car manages preconditioning, not letting the car precondition below 20%, and the limitations in finding a charging station. There are a lot of other electric cars that are just a lot easier and simpler to use, a lot less button presses, and using this on the move isn't very safe. Several times I've been using this, trying to use it on the road, and I'm like, oh, I gotta look at, I have been looking at the road for a while now, so I have to move my gauge towards the road, and that really isn't safe. And that is, for me, an experienced electric car driver, on a route I've driven maybe 70 or 80 times in these tests the past few years. So before I end this part of the video, I want to show you guys that we're now at 41% and basically peaking 225 kilowatts. That is pretty decent. So when this car works, when preconditioning works, it is pretty awesome, the charging speed you get out of this car. Welcome back to SO in Slepen, where we started this test earlier today. So we arrived here with 15% stated charge, so plenty of juice, no drama at all, no risk of us not being able to make it back here on the charge we had. The reason for that is, well, I charged a little bit more than what I wanted to. Once we were at that charging station in Rugtvedt, the recharge charging station, I hopped into the service station, went to the toilet, bought a soda, and once I was back in the car was already up to 62%. I only wanted to charge to 60%, but when there's enough temperature in this battery and we're connected to a very rapid charger, it just charges super quickly. So that is pretty good. We also arrived here with 24.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers in average consumption. And the big question is this car much more efficient, more efficient at all, in eco mode and also with regen turned off, thus decoupling the front motor? I'm not sure. I don't think the results and the difference in consumption of this test and my motorway range test really proves that this car is more efficient. Yes, the consumption is lower, but that is because we've had higher temperatures and also the average speed in this test is lower. If you look at the chart that I'm soon going to show you and compare it to my motorway range test, there's always a difference between 1 and 2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers between my motorway range test and this test. And the results today are within that margin. So I really don't think this car is noticeably more efficient in eco mode and with regen turned off because the car's just managing everything as efficient as possible when you're driving in adaptive cruise control. So with that out of the way, let's get to today's results. So this Kia EV6 GT on the 610 kilometer long range test spent 44 minutes in total charging. And that isn't a very good result, and not even close to what we got with the Kia EV6 long range just 2 years ago on smaller wheels and with a more efficient drivetrain. So I just think intrinsically this drivetrain is just more inefficient than that car. But there's one caveat and one thing to think about in the difference between this test and that test is that the temperatures in that test were between 3 and 7 degrees Celsius, and today I think it was between -7 and +4. So noticeably colder, and that coldness and the battery, you know, the way it manages preconditioning and the charging speed we got may be the real culprit for why we got much higher charging times. But also the average consumption, 2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers higher. So I really think that this car just is a little bit more inefficient, about 10% more inefficient than the long range dual motor with small wheels, considering the temperature differences. So guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below, and for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later, and goodbye.